Welcome to Noblesnake Reviews, where we seek the stories that make us better. And being the testosterone-fueled man's man that I am, I naturally am a big fan of the show My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic.
My little pony, my little pony.
This is one of those never judge a book by its cover stories. Who would ever have expected that one of the best animated shows on the air today would be a tale about magical talking ponies ostensibly aimed at grade school girls? But through some thoughtful writing, fantastic characters, good animation, and surprisingly wise morals, that's exactly what we got. The setup is that in the magical land of Equestria, yeah, you kinda have to develop a tolerance for horse puns, an introverted bookworm named Twilight Sparkle uncovers a prophecy foretelling the return of an ancient evil. At the same time, though, her mentor, Princess Celestia, tells her that she needs to stop studying so much and make some friends. No, I can't relate to that at all. Twilight thus reluctantly befriends a diverse group of 5 other ponies, and together they defeat the evil Nightmare Moon. Twilight then decides to stay in the town of Ponyville to learn more about the magic of friendship. Yes, it sounds corny, and it kind of is, but the show actually takes its premise very seriously. I don't mean it's grim or somber, but that the characters all consistently act like something is really at stake.
Suck it up, Fluttershy! This is no time for... I mean, confidence or no confidence. I'm gonna need every Pegasus to break the record, including you! I need every ounce of wing power I can get!
Even when the story is as simple as having a sleepover, the characters behave as if they really care about what happens. Like the outcome will have real consequences. Maybe not world-shattering ones, but ones that will leave an impact on their lives for better or worse. The fact that the show embraces its premise with such sincerity means that, after a while, we start to take it seriously as well, and even sort of forget that we're watching a show about pastel-colored talking ponies. Again and again, the show's cutesy, kid-friendly exterior hides remarkably mature themes. For instance, a major part of pony culture are their cutie marks, designs on their flanks that indicate their own special talents. The name sounds trite and childish as anything, but through some skillful handling, the device becomes a potent metaphor for individual identity and one's place in society. At various times, it's used to explore ideas of freedom and equality, self-knowledge, maturity, and the question of fate versus free will.
Guess I'm pretty worried about getting my cutie mark.
Well, that is the same as worrying about who you are. That is all a cutie mark is. If you cannot accept who you are, your life might seem like a bad dream.
Thus, what initially seems like a silly, childish element comes to feel genuinely important from the fact that the show uses it so well. It helps that the writing, especially with regards to the lead characters themselves, is really, really good. The main cast consists of our heroine Twilight, who is intellectual and a little obsessive, her assistant and surrogate little brother Spike the Dragon, who is earnest and loyal but prone to be greedy and childishly foolish, Rainbow Dash, a boastful and highly competitive star athlete, Applejack, a stubborn, hard-working farmer, Fluttershy, a timid, soft-spoken animal lover, Rarity, a vain but very sweet dressmaker, and Pinkie Pie, a hyperactive party girl and baker. In later seasons, they're joined by Starlight Glimmer, an impulsive magical prodigy and reformed villain. In addition, many episodes focus on the antics of the Cutie Mark Crusaders, a trio of young ponies trying to figure out their place in the world, which consists of single-minded Apple Bloom, musically inclined Sweetie Belle, and speed-loving Scootaloo. That's a pretty large ensemble. And every one of the main cast, and a pretty good chunk of the supporting cast, is a complete, 3-dimensional character with a distinct personality and their own set of flaws, virtues, goals, and passions. Take Rainbow Dash, for instance. She's a tough, energetic tomboy who loves to brag about how awesome she is.
Ponyville? I'm probably the best flyer in all of Equestria. I wouldn't be surprised if they just went ahead and made me a Wonderbolt on the first day.
Over time, though, we discover that her boastfulness isn't just arrogance. Rainbow values excellence and puts enormous pressure on herself to succeed. If she thinks she's going to fail, she suffers depression and panic attacks. Her self-aggrandizement is her way of keeping her own confidence up.
Flying is like 30% skill and 70% confidence.
This fits with the fact that, despite her toughness, she's actually shown to be very emotional and repeatedly struggles to rein in her feelings. It also fits with her being very selfless with regards to important matters, and that she's just as ready to brag on behalf of others as herself. Rainbow thus has a complex and consistent character, with her underlying mentality informing both her flaws and her virtues. And that's just a brief summary. You could fill whole essays just with Rainbow Dash's psychology and character development. And again, all the main cast are like that. The characterization on this show is simply fantastic. Meanwhile, the whole show has a very interesting vibe.
My vibe?
Half the time, it takes the form of a slice-of-life cartoon, with the characters dealing with things like which friend to bring to a party, what to do when you feel jealous, that sort of thing.
You and Applejack should totally sleep over. We'll have a slumber party. I've always wanted one of those.
The rest of the time, it becomes a high-fantasy fairy tale, with the cast fighting dragons and shape-shifting monsters, dealing with enchantments, and so on.
Discord, show yourself!
Did you miss me, Celestia? I missed you.
Not only that, but the two milieus keep crossing over in unexpected ways. There's an episode where the characters play what's basically Dungeons and Dragons, except that one of them is a reality-warping mad god and former evil overlord. Or there's another episode where they matter-of-factly set about changing the seasons, since in this world the ponies control the weather in the regions they've settled. This leads to a few creative consequences, including an episode where Rainbow Dash attempts to simply stop winter from happening. Her efforts naturally backfire, leading to this.
Prepare yourselves, every pony. Winter is coming.
On that note, let's talk about the comedy. Sincere as it is, this is a very funny show, with plenty of slapstick, clever wordplay, and, of course, just the interactions between the characters.
Very noble of you. I'll write to you when you're banished. Unless I'm banished too somewhere there's no post office, then you'll have to write to me. Deal?
I'm just no good at lyrics. Coming up with words is like really hard.
Nervous? Don't be ridiculous. You're only facing a large crowd of ponies who will be watching your every move and silently judging you.
Now what do we do? Panic? That's your answer for everything.
And that's all just the first season. As it goes on and we get to know the characters better, the jokes get even funnier, and they add running gags and callbacks to the mix.
We're gonna make my sister see. I don't need her watching over me. Stop! No time for a song!
I mean, you're me, but I'm me too. How can there be two me's? It's not scientifically possible. You are not scientifically possible.
Why are your eyes darting around like that?
That's what I do when I'm not nervous.
The show is also very self-aware of its own foibles, as well as how most people think of it, and sometimes engages in a bit of cheerful self-mockery.
We are such happy flowers. We will now sing for hours.
Then sometimes they'll just pile gag on top of gag. For instance, there's one scene where Pinky is trying to sneak around town disguised by a pair of Groucho glasses. That's pretty funny. Then she bumps into Fluttershy and the glasses land on her tail. That's also funny. Then this happens. That is friggin' hilarious. There's also a lot of what I call funny hat humor, which involves dressing up cute characters in different costumes. Personally, I love this sort of thing. I mean, how can you not love it when a cute purple unicorn ends up dressed like Kurt Russell in Escape from New York? As all this indicates, the show is remarkably creative, and remains so even in its 7th season. Partly this is due to the fact that the writers aren't afraid to periodically make permanent changes to the story. Characters grow and develop, goals are achieved, and new ones acquired, new characters and new locations are added, and on and on. When something changes on this show, it stays changed, which opens up new possibilities and new storylines to explore. In short, the show is continually evolving, which keeps it pretty fresh and interesting. Speaking of creativity, let's talk about the animation. It's simple, but very appealing. The characters have a great design that is both clearly equine, but with enough humanity about the faces to be relatable. Their movements are surprisingly impressive as well, in that they often mimic the mannerisms of real ponies. For instance, when Twilight bucks Spike off her back, she does so in the manner a real horse would rid itself of a troublesome rider.
Say that 10 times fast.
The animation style also has an unexpected benefit. Since it was easier to simply reuse existing models than create new ones, the show has built up an amusingly consistent cast of background characters over the years. The same Ponyville citizens, for instance, keep popping up again and again without ever actually having a real role in the story. This both makes the world feel more alive and fleshed out, and rewards close attention and repeated viewings to catch all the little bits of business going on in the corners of the shot. Watch what happens to Pinky's crayon in this scene, for instance.
Put down that crayon! The Canterine Cook isn't that kind of restaurant. A pony could get used to eating at places like this.
The amount of background detail at times reminds me of the best stop-motion films of Henry Selick or Aardman Animation. It's reached the point where some of the background characters have become hugely popular in their own right, and even graduated to becoming supporting cast members. Oh, and I have to say, I absolutely love the walk and run animations on the foals. The show also features quite a few songs, and while as a rule they're not nearly as good as the ones in, say, Phineas and Ferb, there are a lot of fun and catchy numbers in there.
My favorite moment's when a pony sees it. That special gown that she just adores. That pony's now in style. My heart rips so worthwhile. Oh yes, it makes my heart just soar.
Then there are the lessons. These, along with the characters, are the show's main strength. Where the lessons on most kids' shows tend to be shallow retreads of believe in yourself, don't judge people, be nice, and so on, the lessons in My Little Pony are surprisingly sophisticated. For instance, there's one episode where Rarity goes to a fashion show, only for a rival to take advantage of her generosity to steal her designs. This forces her to improvise new ones at the last minute, causing her to become very demanding towards her friends.
Twilight, sew these pieces together according to that pattern there.
You said if we skip dinner at the Farfield Tavern, you'd order a meal for us to eat while we keep working.
Don't fret, it'll be here in an hour. That's not going to be a problem, is it?
There are a couple thoughtful moral ideas right there, like that helping others involves the risk that they might take advantage of your kindness, and that you might not always act your best when under stress, but that doesn't mean you're a bad person or that your friends will abandon you for it.
Yeah, you were pretty rotten.
Wow, Applejack. I know your thing is honesty, but come on!
Last night we may not have seen you at your best, but we know you, and we would never let one thing like that change how we feel about you.
There are quite a few episodes like that. One episode features Rainbow Dash finding out that achieving her dream might mean compromising her moral values, forcing her to decide if it's really worth it. Another one has the handicapped Scootaloo coming to terms with the fact that, however badly she wants it, she simply can't fly and maybe never will.
But, Rainbow Dash, what if my wings never grow? What if I never fly?
Listen, Scootaloo. Maybe you'll fly someday, or maybe you won't. You're all kinds of awesome anyway.
One of the turning points of the series depends on Twilight offering mercy to someone she has every reason to hate. Even when the show does tackle the usual themes of prejudice, believing in yourself, and so on, it's typically done much more thoughtfully than in most shows of this kind. In the episode that introduces Zecora the zebra, for instance, Twilight at first scoffs at the other's prejudice, but then finds that there actually does seem to be a lot of evidence in favor of their view.
Everything is pointing to Zecora being bad.
Only to discover in the end that it all admits of a different explanation that she hadn't considered. That's a lot smarter than simply don't judge people who are different. It encourages the audience to not just examine the facts, but also to consider the possible interpretations of them before making a judgment call. Likewise, the theme of harmony between different types of people is remarkably well realized for the simple fact that the show is smart enough to emphasize the personalities, rather than the appearance or race of the characters. There are 3 tribes of ponies, but apart from a single flashback episode showing the creation of Equestria, the interactions of the tribes is a non-issue. Unicorns don't look down on Earth ponies or discriminate against Pegasi. The harmony that is repeatedly emphasized involves differences in personality, interest, and ideas. Whenever there is any kind of racial tension, so to speak, it's for a very good reason. Like that griffins actually are abrasive jerks, or that dragons actually are dangerous and violent. It's almost never simply unthinking prejudice. Thus, even if one side is in the wrong, the message is that it's up to you to take the initiative by offering them kindness and sympathy before they change their attitudes. That's both a lot more realistic and a lot more challenging than the typical prejudice is bad message. Throughout the series, the emphasis is repeatedly placed on what you, the individual, can do, rather than how others will react. The underlying principle is that individual virtue is the most important thing. That right there makes this more intelligent and thoughtful than a lot of adult shows.
Being honest sure gets hard when it seems like the truth might hurt some pony you care about. But I think believing a lie can end up hurting even more.
Meanwhile, it also periodically addresses such issues as the value of family, working hard to achieve your dreams, respecting your elders and ancestors, and even things like patriotism and the importance of learning history.
Reading Celestia's diary made it hard to be afraid, because I knew what it was like when she and Luna lived here. Knowing something about the past made it easier to deal with my problems in the present, even the scary ones.
What strikes me again and again is how normal these attitudes are. The heroines are all smart, self-possessed characters, but they're also shown to care about their appearance and being attractive, and there's nothing wrong with that. When they learn that Twilight's brother and sister-in-law are going to have a baby, everyone is beside themselves with excitement, because a new baby is a cause for joy.
A baby, Twilight! It's a baby!
As noted, they're even shown to have pride in their community and nation. The local equivalent to Christmas is actually a national holiday celebrating the founding of Equestria. Nor do any of them evince the slightest hostility or resentment towards the male characters, or really anything else. They're all too busy working on their own lives and having fun together to feel aggrieved. So, My Little Pony is a great show. The writing is great, the characters are fantastic, it's hilarious, creative, well animated, just all around a wonderful cartoon. Sounds perfect? Well, no. Like any show, especially one that's lasted this long, it has its share of clunker episodes. Though even the worst generally have at least a few good points. For instance, there's a rather painful episode about bullying that nevertheless has an insanely catchy song right in the middle. Then also, the show is pretty inconsistent with the characters' abilities, with them basically amounting to whatever we need for this story. Thus, in one episode, Rainbow Dash will be able to pick up and throw a boulder that must weigh several tons, and in another, she'll barely be able to lift a pony only a little larger than herself. Finally, some of the story developments simply aren't very well done. Like, bad guys will sometimes reform much too easily. In particular, there's one major change at the end of the third season that comes much too abruptly and doesn't really feel earned by what preceded it. Though even in these cases, it's usually compensated by how well the writers deal with the consequences.
What if now that I'm a princess, Celestia expects me to lead a kingdom of my own?
That would be awesome!
No, it would not! Just because I have this crown and these wings, it doesn't mean I'll be a good leader.
Still, though these problems can be annoying, they don't ultimately detract from the high quality of the show as a whole. Before we wrap up, a word on the Equestria Girls films. These are a series of made-for-TV movies and shorts focusing on an alternate universe filled with human versions of the characters.
Principal Celestia? She's the ruler here?
You could say that.
My own take is that I like them. They're enjoyable, give us a fresh perspective on the same great characters, and serve as an interesting side story. Plus, I think Sunset Shimmer, the protagonist of the films, is one of the best characters in the whole series.
Must be nice to have everyone always looking to you for answers to their problems, instead of waiting for you to cause a problem.
Just because everyone expects something from you doesn't mean it's guaranteed to happen.
But that doesn't stop them from expecting it.
Which only makes things harder because the last thing you want to do is let everybody down.
That said, they don't have quite the same charm and aren't really necessary for the show as a whole. You can take them or leave them as you see fit.
Did that dog just talk? Whoa, weird.
Seriously? The talking dog is the weird thing about all this?
Really, all that being said, the chief reason I like this show so much is that it's called My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. This is essentially a toy commercial for elementary school girls, the latest iteration of a franchise that had never amounted to anything of note. There was no reason for them to put this much effort into it. But by God, they tried their absolute best on this, and it shows. I really respect stories like this, that seem to have absolutely nothing going for them, but the writers gave it their all anyway. In this case, they came out with what I think is one of the best cartoons in recent years, sitting comfortably alongside Avatar: The Last Airbender and Phineas and Ferb. The writing, the animation, the characters, the lessons all add up to a genuinely ennobling show. But we're not ponied out yet. Tune in next time when we start counting down my picks for the best characters on the show.